Midnight, Congresswoman Crockett sat on the left side of the stage, arms crossed, face unreadable. She wasn't there to perform, yet everyone watching knew something was about to happen. Already running behind schedule, the broadcast had producers scrambling during the commercial break. They queued up a clip from Trump's latest rally, recorded just 2 nights earlier in Amarillo, Texas. 022, the energy there had been high. Like always, he played to the crowd, dramatic, theatrical, and loud. It wasn't the first time he'd mentioned her by name. But this time, he took it further. In front of a national audience, with his signature slouched posture and familiar pout, he mocked her, "Jasmine Crockett, I've seen smarter fish in a tank." 045, these people send clowns to Congress and wonder why the country is falling apart. Laughter erupted. A sign with her name and a cartoonish drawing of a nose was held up in the front row. Back in the studio, the clip ended and nobody spoke. It wasn't for dramatic effect. It was the kind of silence that buzzes with discomfort. 105, you could hear monitors humming, even a cough from the sound booth. Finally, Glenn Barkley, the moderator and an old-school reporter known for keeping things balanced, turned to her. Adjusting his glasses, he said, "Congresswoman Crockett, you've heard what the former president said. Would you like to respond?" She let out a soft breath, tilted her head, and leaned forward. 130, not in a rush, not as if she'd memorized a speech, but like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Look," she began, calm and steady. "I'm not here to feed into the man's obsession with name-calling. If someone thinks they can smell intelligence, it's no surprise they get confused around me." Her tone didn't rise. Her face didn't flinch. 150, crisp and clear as glass, her words landed. The room cracked. Glenn tried to hold a straight face, but a smile crept in. Across from her, Republican strategist Andy Keller's jaw loosened slightly. Another panelist, a journalist from Phoenix, blinked, smiled, and glanced at the producer as if to say, "Please tell me that was caught on camera." 213, the moment sparked a reaction, not a gentle ripple, but something sharp and undeniable. People didn't just laugh, they noticed. It was one of those instances where power shifts, not through shouting, but through a single sentence. Crockett didn't yell. She didn't have to. She continued, steady as ever. "I've put in years of work. 236, I've studied. I've stood up for people who needed it. And I'm not going to waste time on the insults of someone who struggles with honesty, grammar, and a working microphone." Andy tried to interject, something about respecting the office, something about tone, but she didn't even glance his way. "I hold office," she said. 258, I'm not a decoration for his rallies. Let's talk policy. Leave the playground stuff outside. That moment, it wasn't just a news segment anymore. It was something real, raw, direct, and impossible to overlook. The producers cut to a wider shot. Cameras lingered on Crockett's expression for just a beat longer before cutting to commercial. 320, but the real moment didn't wait for the break. It had already escaped into the world. It started with a clip from the control room, slightly shaky, taken on a phone. You could hear the studio laughing, but more importantly, you could hear her, uncut, unfiltered. "If you can smell intelligence, no wonder you're confused around me." 342, an hour later, when the official clip hit the network's YouTube page, it was already viral. Twitter exploded. Quotes, memes, GIFs. Some overlaid her words on her photo. One replaced Wonder Woman's face with hers. Another showed her dressed as a judge, slamming a gavel labeled "Facts." Then TikTok jumped in. A 19-year-old in Bakersfield lip-synced the moment in a parody, wearing thick glasses and a mock congressional name tag. 2. For 3 million views before sunrise. A beauty influencer in Minneapolis played Crockett's quote while applying mascara, calling her "the moral compass I didn't know I needed." Even celebrities got in on it. Kerry Washington shared the clip. Ava DuVernay tweeted one word, precision. But it wasn't just hype. The moment sparked conversations, fast, sharp, and widespread. For 37, cable shows covered it that evening. Local radio clipped it into sound bites. Influencers latched on like they'd been waiting for someone to say exactly that. Reddit threads labeled it, "the smell heard around the world." By the next morning, Crockett was trending in 5 countries. She hadn't just answered back. She'd struck a chord. 4:59, not everyone took it lightly. Conservative blogs quickly twisted the moment into a headline frenzy. Congresswoman Crockett uses bathroom humor to bash former president, one post claimed. Another accused her of being proof that liberals only care about snappy comebacks, not real solutions. Over at Fox Nation, an entire segment aired debating whether Crockett had stooped to Trump's level. 5:23, here's what was fascinating. She hadn't said anything vulgar. She didn't curse. She didn't shout. Plainly spoken, her words made it land where it hurt. And for people who had known her, none of this was shocking. Back in her college days at Prairie View A&M, she'd once shut down a guy's tasteless joke during a student town hall with just one sentence. 5:47, you can't throw shade if you're still sitting in the dark. People still remembered that line. She had always had that rare mix, timing, truth, and knowing exactly where to hit when it matters most. The very next day, her office phones wouldn't stop ringing. Her communications director, Zola Merriman, was practically surviving on espresso and non-stop group texts. 6:11, Jazz, she said between back-to-back calls, CNN wants you. So does The View. MSNBC just reached out. Even a law podcast from Stanford wants you as their keynote guest. Crockett smiled faintly, amused. Are the students paying? Zola just raised her eyebrows. Didn't think so, Crockett muttered. But then Zola paused, her tone shifting. 6:38, seriously, this could be a turning point. People are finally listening. Not because of a scandal, but because you said something honest, and it struck a nerve. The praise rolled in fast. But something else, something deeper started happening, too. Messages came from young black women in law school, from girls on high school debate teams, from professionals who'd been told they were too much. 7:03, one woman wrote, "You gave me permission to be smart out loud." That hit differently. It wasn't about the joke. It was about what it stood for. That intelligence, especially in a black woman, could be claimed, defended, even used without having to apologize for it. By the weekend, Crockett's team had to hire extra help just to keep up with media requests. 7:26, every network wanted her take. Everyone wanted a follow-up. Everyone waited for her to clap back again. But Crockett didn't flood the airwaves with new sound bites. She stayed quiet. Let the moment breathe. Let it speak for itself. But power like that never travels without impact. It always ricochets. 7:50, 3 days after the segment aired, Jasmine Crockett entered her district office in Arlington, Texas, through the side door. Her day was packed, committee briefings, calls about a brewing budget issue, meetings with community activists. But inside, Zola was already at her desk, arms crossed, eyes blurry. "You didn't see the Post headline yet, did you?" she asked. 8:15, Crockett shook her head, dropped her bag by the window. "Nope. You going to read it to me like it's bedtime poetry?" Zola sighed, then read aloud. Crockett's comeback, clever or calculated. And that wasn't even the worst. The Dallas Tribune called her too slick to be sincere. Another op-ed hinted she was hiding behind her identity to deflect real criticism. 8:38, that one hit deeper than she expected. Jasmine slowly set her phone down, looked at Zola. "I said one sentence," she said quietly. "One." "I know," Zola replied. "And now I'm either a joke teller or a schemer." Zola didn't answer. She didn't have to. They both knew the pattern. The rules were different for women like her, and even more twisted when she dared to push back with confidence. 9:05, inside her office, the air felt thick. Not the kind of tired you sleep off, but the kind that piles up from every misrepresentation, every subtle dig, every dismissive smirk pretending to be a question. Crockett reached for a manila folder. Her committee notes were neatly organized, as usual. She was known in Washington for doing the reading twice and spotting details seasoned aides overlooked. 9:30, but none of that seemed to matter now. The narrative had taken on a life of its own. Across town, her mother, Lorraine, sat in her kitchen watching a replay of the segment on her iPad. She'd seen it 3 times already that week, equal parts proud and uneasy. Lorraine didn't show her worry easily. She'd raised Jasmine on her own after her husband passed from a stroke when Jasmine was just 9. 9:54, she was the kind of woman who could make $10 stretch for a week and still put dinner on the table. But this, watching her daughter become a target of loud voices with louder platforms, it unsettled her. She picked up the phone. "Baby," she said, "I just want to know you're all right." Jasmine paused before answering. "I'm fine, Ma." 10:17, just tired of dancing around the noise. There was a silence, then her mother's voice, soft but steady. "It might be noise to you, Jazzy, but to them it's everything. Some of these people want to see you shaken. Don't let them." "I'm not shaken. I didn't say you were. Just hold your frame. You've always had it. And that stayed with her. Hold your frame." 10:41, her mother's words echoed in Jasmine's head. Back at the office, a senior aide knocked twice and stepped in quietly. "MSNBC's on the line again. They're asking for 10 minutes tonight." Zola let out a tired groan. "That's the third time they've followed up. Should we delay them again?" But Jasmine's attention had drifted out the office window across the street. 11:05, her own face stared back at her from a bus stop ad. Someone had taken her quote, slapped it on a bold graphic, and turned it into a grassroots campaign poster. The version of her on that banner looked strong, unbothered, even defiant. But to Jasmine, it felt like a version frozen in performance. 11:25, "I'll do it," she said finally. "Tonight, but I'm not walking into another trap. I'm not letting them make me a headline again." Zola looked at her. "So, what are you going to say?" Jasmine turned away from the window. "I'm going to say the truth, and this time they're going to have to sit with it. But truth rarely lands soft." 11:47, she already knew the next wave wouldn't be applause. It would be personal, messy, and full of claws. By the time Jasmine sat under the lights at the MSNBC studio that evening, Trump had already answered. Not with a press release, not from a campaign spokesperson, but with a quick, fiery video posted straight to his Truth Social page. 12:07, it was filmed aboard his jet, golden leather seats behind him, an American flag awkwardly draped to the side. He didn't hold back. "Jasmine Crockett, she's the new face of the radical left," he sneered. "If you want loud mouths and empty minds running Congress, then sure, go ahead. Make her your hero. But I call her out. And suddenly, I'm the problem." 12:30, he grinned the way he always did. I squinted, voice dripping with mockery. "She thinks she's clever. I think she's exactly what's broken in D.C. It wasn't just a jab. It was a full-scale character hit, meant to stir his base and paint Crockett as everything they love to rage against." By airtime, her quote had turned into gasoline for both sides. 12:53, right-wing radio hosts called her disrespectful, arrogant, divisive. Fringe podcasters labeled her a planted puppet. And worse, people began questioning not her work, not her record, but her worth. As if the question now wasn't about what she did, but whether she belonged. The moderator, a younger journalist named Nina Hall, tried to steer things neutrally. 13:17, "Congresswoman Crockett," she began, "the former president released a video just hours ago. He called you a mascot and said you represent dysfunction in government. How would you respond?" Jasmine didn't flinch. "I'll respond the same way I do to all his rants," she said evenly. "With facts. He can name-call all day, but I'm the one showing up to hearings, passing bills, and fighting for people who can't afford to attend his rallies." Nina nodded. 13:46, but her next question came gently. "Do you think maybe the viral moment took attention away from the policy issues you wanted to highlight?" Jasmine leaned forward. "You know what really distracts from policy, Nina? A man using his platform to insult women instead of debating ideas." I said one sentence and somehow I became the circus. The room fell still. 14:09, even the producer behind the lens froze mid-cue. "I didn't ask for that moment," she continued. "I was invited. I responded and I did it cleaner than how I was addressed. Now people want to know if I'm too sharp, too bold, too much. But let's be honest, if my name were Jacob instead of Jasmine, would we still be asking this?" And there it was, the quiet part spoken plainly. 14:36, after the taping, Nina approached her off camera. "You nailed it," she said in a low voice. But as Jasmine stepped into the cool air outside the studio, her phone buzzed non-stop. She didn't have to check it. Zola had already warned her, the ugliness was going to spike before it faded. Voicemails were pouring in. Blocked numbers, anonymous messages. 1,500 hours, one voice told her to go back to your roots and stay out of white folks' politics. Another caller repeated her name slowly, like it was something to spit. Some accused her of arrogance. Others didn't bother with subtleties. But one message made her stop walking. It came from a Texas area code. 1519, the man's voice was flat, cold, no shouting, just intent. You've stirred the wrong crowd, Congresswoman. That's all I'll say. Watch your back. She played it twice. Then again, and forwarded it immediately to Capitol Police. That night, alone in her hotel room, she sat at the edge of the bed. The TV was on but muted. 1543, city lights cut through the window blinds. Outside, the world was loud, full of opinions, headlines, debates. Inside, it was just her and the thought she tried not to let in. What if this isn't about what I said, but about who I am when I say it? But the spiral didn't last, because the next call wasn't a threat. 1603, it was someone she never expected to hear from. Still staring at her faint reflection in the dark glass, her phone lit up with a name, Franklin G. She froze. Congressman Franklin Garrison, 67 years old, Navy vet, old-school Republican from Montana. Not exactly someone who shared her politics, but tonight he was calling her, and that changed everything. 1626, they'd been seated across from each other on the Judiciary Committee for 2 years. He once called her a spark plug with too much voltage, not exactly rude, but classic Franklin, blunt, a little backhanded, and oddly endearing. She picked up the phone. Congressman Garrison. Jasmine, he said. Just wanted to say you carried yourself well. She raised an eyebrow. 1649, that's surprising. I don't care for the name calling on either side, he added quickly. But what you said, it needed to be said, and you said it better than most. She paused, a bit thrown. Didn't expect that from you. He chuckled. I've got layers. Just don't tell my base. Then, after a brief silence, he added, don't let the noise wear you down. 1714, you're bigger than this moment. Don't forget that. The call didn't last long, but the words stayed with her. Not because she needed his approval, but because somewhere in the chaos, someone had seen her clearly. That clarity didn't slow the storm. When she got back to Arlington the next morning, things had escalated. 1735, her district office had received 2 suspicious packages. One was filled with glitter and fake excrement, juvenile, maybe, but the other was more serious. A thick manila envelope with no return address. The handwriting on the outside was smudged, uneven. Inside was one line printed in bold type, next time, shut your mouth, security was called. 1758, officers swept the building. Staff were sent home for the day. Jasmine stayed behind, sitting quietly in her office, watching officers sift through mail with gloves on. Zola stepped in, holding a water bottle, face tight. You all right? Jasmine asked. Zola didn't reply right away. She sat down across from her, then finally said, they called my mom. 1823, Jasmine's eyes narrowed. What? Someone found her number. She answered thinking it was me. The guy asked if she raised a political loudmouth or a walking target. Then he hung up. Jasmine's fingers clenched around the armrest. This is what they want, to make us afraid, to push us into silence. Zola leaned in, her voice low. It's working, Jazz. 1849, I've got 2 interns who won't come back. Volunteers are pulling out of this weekend's drive, and I'm tired. We're all tired. It was the first time Zola's composure cracked. Her armor had always been solid. Tonight, it buckled. Later that evening, Jasmine drove without warning to her mother's house. She didn't call ahead. 1911, she just needed to be near her. Needed a moment of something real. Lorraine opened the door in slippers, hair wrapped, eyes tired. You eat today? She asked. Jasmine smiled faintly. You always lead with food. Lorraine shrugged. Food keeps you strong. Words wear off. Carbs stick. They sat in the kitchen, bowls of hot gumbo between them. 1938, on the muted TV in the corner, a rerun of that political segment played. A conservative talking head now called Jasmine reckless and disrespectful. Lorraine hit mute. You okay, Jazzy? Jasmine didn't answer at first. She swirled her spoon, watching the okra sink. Then she said, I'm not scared. I'm just tired. Tired of having to prove myself. 2004, twice over to be seen as half as capable. Her mother reached over and placed her hand gently on hers. You know what your daddy used to say, they only bark when you're close to the truth. That man didn't say much, but when he did, he meant it. That brought out a real laugh from Jasmine. You didn't say anything wrong, Lorraine continued. 2026, you just said it in a way they couldn't pretend not to hear, and that scares them. They sat in a silence that didn't need filling. Later that night, Jasmine stood at her bathroom sink. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't reach for it. Not yet. She looked at herself in the mirror, hair tied back, makeup gone, eyes heavy. She whispered to her reflection, almost like a reminder, you're more than a moment. 2051, and for that second, she believed it. But belief alone wouldn't be enough. Not when the storm was still circling, waiting on her next move or her next sentence. The next voice to break through was someone she never thought would take her side. The morning after she'd visited her mother, her phone lit up again, a name she hadn't seen since a transportation hearing 6 months earlier, Elliot Brandt. 2116, she froze. Congressman Brandt from Idaho, staunch conservative, ex-rancher, loud opponent of regulation, the kind of guy who thought crossing the aisle meant borrowing barbecue sauce. She considered ignoring it. She wasn't in the mood for another moss-covered threat disguised as politeness, but curiosity won. She answered. Congressman Brandt. 2137, Congresswoman Crockett, he said, voice unusually calm. I imagine this wasn't the call you expected. I don't usually get morning calls, she replied, from people who once claimed solar energy was a vegan hoax. He laughed. Fair enough, but I'll keep it brief. I watched your MSNBC segment. 2200 hours, of course you did, she said dryly. I thought it was honest, he said. And brave. That made her pause. I'm not calling to flatter you, he continued. I'm calling because I've seen how this place works up close. I've been in DC long enough to know when someone's getting steamrolled. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. 2221, and you've been here long enough to vote for just about every bill that makes it harder for people like me to cast one. He didn't blink. I'm not here to argue history. I'm just saying this, what Trump did crossed the line. You had every right to respond. I may not agree with your politics, but I respect the hell out of how you handled it. 2242, there was a pause. Jasmine let out a slow breath through her nose. So why the call, she asked. You fishing for a good quote or a clean conscience? Neither, he said. I'm going on the record today, live on News Nation. I'm going to say exactly what I just told you. Thought you deserved to hear it first. She blinked. You sure your base won't chew you up for that? Oh, they will. 2311, but maybe some of them need to hear it. And just like that, the call ended. An hour later, Elliot Brandt appeared on screen in a navy blue suit. No flag pin, no theatrics, calm, grounded. The interview started off polite, but soon turned toward the now viral clip of Jasmine's response. The host leaned in. You've been on the Hill for 3 decades. 2335, what do you make of Congresswoman Crockett's remarks and the fallout? Brandt didn't flinch. People forget that women in Congress, especially black women, are held to a different standard. She responded to a crude insult with clarity and restraint, and it rattled people who aren't used to being challenged without a raised voice. The host hesitated. 2356, so, you support what she said? I support people standing their ground, he replied. Even if I don't agree with them politically. We can fight over policy, but name-calling, that's not leadership. That's cowardice. Social media didn't know what to do with him. The far right called him a traitor. Some said he was trying to soften his legacy before retiring. 2400 hours 19, the left didn't trust him either, but they couldn't ignore the fact that his words gave Jasmine's stance unexpected momentum. Crockett's phone lit up like a switchboard. A college professor in Arizona texted, "Asterisk that Brandt quote gave my students whiplash. They're watching it on loop like a plot twist." Asterisk a young organizer in Michigan messaged, "This is what change looks like when even the unmovable ones start to budge." 2400 hours 45, Zola rushed into Jasmine's office that afternoon, holding up her tablet. "You have to see this." His segment's already clipped and on 3 major outlets. CNN just called it the political surprise of the month. Jasmine didn't say much. She didn't know how to feel. Gratitude wasn't easy to sit with, especially when it had to share space with skepticism. 25:08, Brandt had never once shown her warmth, but he'd said what needed saying, and in that moment, it mattered. That night, she sent him a 2-word text, "Didn't expect," he replied with 3, "Neither did I," but while the outrage was beginning to cool, something deeper was swelling beneath it. The conversation had shifted. It was no longer just about her or even Trump. 25:32, by week's end, the debate had outgrown its spark. What stayed behind was the echo, the way people dissected her tone, questioned her right to clap back with confidence. It traveled far beyond politics. It landed in classrooms, cafeterias, podcasts, office break rooms. Not the screaming kind of debates, but the quiet, complicated ones. 25:56, why do black women get labeled angry when they're simply asserting themselves? Why are they expected to smile while being challenged, insulted, or diminished? That Friday at Wilmer High School in Dallas County, a history teacher named Clara Rue wheeled in a TV card for her senior civics class. She played the clip, then asked a single question. 26:16, would the reaction be the same if a white man had said it? The room went still. Then a girl in the back raised her hand. They'd probably put it on a bumper sticker. There was laughter, but it wasn't light. It landed heavy. College campuses picked it up. The Howard Law Review posted a deep dive tracing generations of women in politics who were labeled too loud, too emotional, too dangerous. 26:43, Jasmine's name was now in the mix, part of a lineage. An op-ed in the Seattle Post-Intelligencer went viral. It was titled, "The Cost of Being Heard." It trended for nearly 3 days. It wasn't praise. It wasn't backlash. It was analysis, questioning how tone, voice, and image are judged differently depending on who is speaking. Jasmine read it twice. 27:08, then came the invitations, panels, lectures, interviews, symposiums. She declined most, not out of pride, but because she was tired. She didn't want to be studied. She just wanted to get back to work. But then one email arrived from an old mentor at Spelman College. Subject line, "It's time." The message was short, asterisk they are finally ready to listen. "I need you to speak, asterisk." 27:33, so Jasmine said yes, just one event, because when the noise fades, someone still needs to tell the story. A live discussion was being held at Drake University in Des Moines, streamed across the country. The theme, power and perception in public life. Jasmine wasn't there to deliver a polished speech. 27:55, she wasn't there to impress anyone. She came to speak plainly, the same way she always had. Backstage, Zola gave her one last reminder, they're expecting a soundbite. Don't give it to them unless it's something you actually mean. Jasmine nodded. I'll give them something better. The auditorium was full. Students, professors, journalists, even older voters with folded arms and skeptical eyes filled the seats. 28:24, Jasmine stepped out wearing navy slacks and a cream-colored blazer. No frills, no flash, just herself. No teleprompter, no printed speech, just a microphone and a pause. Then she spoke. I'm not loud. I'm clear. And for some people, that's uncomfortable. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was space. Permission. I grew up watching people twist themselves just to be taken seriously. 28:51, fixing how they talked, fixing how they dressed, laughing at jokes they didn't find funny. And I told myself, I won't shrink so someone else can feel taller. She scanned the room. Some people leaned forward. I'm not here because I talk back. I'm here because I know what I'm talking about. 29:11, and if that rattles people, they'll have to adjust. The applause didn't explode, it gathered. A slow wave of hands meeting in quiet respect, not excitement, recognition. Backstage, a producer from C-SPAN leaned over to Zola. We've had plenty of politicians speak here, but no one's held the room like that. Zola smiled. That's because she wasn't trying to hold it. She just told the truth. 29:39, later that evening, clips from the event began to spread. But this time, it wasn't about the punchline. It was about the pattern, the way voices like hers were constantly interrogated, pushed to the edge, and then criticized for refusing to fold. Jasmine didn't comment. She didn't need to. The room had already said enough. 30:00, but the public wasn't just watching anymore. They were starting to respond, and not in ways anyone expected. Something deeper had started to take root, something that couldn't be trimmed down to a single line or edited into a headline. 4 days later, Jasmine stood in front of a packed group in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. 30:22, it wasn't a formal town hall, just a modest community center, folding chairs, coffee, and styrofoam cups. No big production. The invite had come from a local teacher who'd been following Jasmine since her days in state politics. She'd written, "These kids don't need a politician. They need someone who's lived it and speaks plain, so Jasmine came." 30:45, no cameras, no podium, just a circle of around 40 people, half under 30, high school students, activists, young moms, a few older folks in the back, just there to see what the buzz was about. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and banana bread. It felt more like a family gathering than anything political. A young man raised his hand early. 31:06, how do you deal with being torn apart just for being sharp, for being smart? Doesn't it wear you down? Jasmine nodded slowly. Every day. The room hushed. She didn't dress it up. No deflection, just the truth. I've had people talk over me in meetings, steal my ideas in real time, then say I'm too aggressive while they're the ones shouting. 31:29, I've had voters ask if I got my law degree from Google. I've been told to soften my delivery so I don't come off hostile. Someone in the back murmured, hostile for being right. Jasmine smiled. Exactly. A girl in a Drake University hoodie raised her voice. So why keep going? Jasmine looked at her for a moment before answering. 31:52, because if I stop showing up as myself, they win twice. First by disrespecting me, and second by making me disappear. That landed. Heads nodded. A few people clapped, not the kind of applause that fills a room, the kind that means you earned that. Then she said something no one expected, and it would be printed on t-shirts by the end of the week. 32:16, I'm not going to water myself down just so I'm easier to swallow. The line was captured on a blurry phone video by a teenager in the third row. It went viral faster than any press event Jasmine had ever held. It wasn't packaged. It wasn't planned. It was just real. By morning, the clip had over 4.32:38, 7 million views across platforms. A national columnist shared it with the caption, "What happens when a black woman in politics stops apologizing for being smart and refuses to disappear?" Zola came bursting into Jasmine's office later that day, tablet in hand. "You're in the Atlantic's weekend newsletter." Jasmine sipped her tea. "I was just answering a question." 33:00, exactly, Zola said. "That's what they're responding to. You're not arguing anymore. You're just being." But Jasmine knew better. She knew the storm wasn't over. It had only started shifting direction. Every word she spoke, every silence she let sit, every gesture she made in public was still being watched. The storm hadn't passed. 33:24, it had just changed direction. That afternoon, while preparing for a budget committee meeting, Jasmine glanced at her inbox. One subject line stood out, quote requests. It had been forwarded by her team. Vanity Fair, Vox, NPR, Essence, The Cut. All of them wanted a new soundbite, something that could fit in quotation marks, something that could sum up decades of pressure in a dozen words or less. 33:53, but Jasmine wasn't interested in being a headline anymore. She didn't want to be clipped. She wanted to be heard. The whole sentence, not just the part that fit neatly on a poster. That evening, she posted a single line on social media, "I'm not here for applause. I'm here to be heard." And if that's too much for some, they were never listening to begin with, 34:16, no hashtags, no names, just clarity. And people responded. Teachers printed the quote and taped it to classroom doors. A team of public defenders in New York read it aloud during their weekly check-in. Young organizers in Detroit added it to flyers and pinned it on bulletin boards. Something had shifted. It wasn't just about her anymore. 34:38, it was about permission to speak up without apology. But the moment that stayed with her didn't come from a tweet or a clip or a headline. It came from someone she had never met. It was a cloudy Saturday in Topeka, Kansas. Jasmine had just wrapped a closed-door meeting with local city council members when a staffer from the mayor's office tapped her on the shoulder. 35:00, there's a student waiting outside. Said she's been here since before the meeting started. Took 2 buses to get here. Asked for 30 seconds of your time. That's all. Jasmine checked her watch. The next event wasn't for another hour. Where is she? The aide led her to the hallway where a teenage girl stood holding a sketch pad tight to her chest. Maybe 16, maybe 17. 35:25, tall, nervous, hoodie too big, jeans cuffed twice at the ankles. She didn't speak at first, just stared for a beat as if she needed to make sure Jasmine was real. Then softly, "I saw your clip. The one where you said you weren't going to water yourself down." Jasmine smiled. "Yeah." The girl nodded. "I'm Adrian. I'm on the speech team at school." 35:50, I used to talk real soft 'cause every time I didn't, people said I was rude. But after I saw you, I tried something new. She opened the sketch pad. Inside was a printed speech. The title, "Why I Speak Clearly, Not Softly," on the second page. Jasmine's quote was printed in bold, underlined twice. "I got a standing ovation," Adrian said. "First time ever." 36:15, Jasmine didn't give a speech back. She just pulled her in for a hug. No cameras, no reporters, just 2 people. One who